Hey there folks, thought I'd do a short little video about a little meditation technique, a little breathing technique that I sort of sometimes use. I'm not really a big meditator and it's not a huge part of the course, but Jesus calls it long-winded in the course. But sometimes I'll do a little thing just to like calm down and relax and so on and get a bit of clarity and perspective. And one thing that I've tried to do is slowing down your breathing or focusing on the breathing and trying to get the breath to be longer. But I've always found it to be kind of difficult, and I couldn't understand for a long time why it was difficult, because you're supposed to try to breathe for a certain amount of time or have a breath that is longer, and you got to somehow sort of regulate the breathing to try to hit this target of, okay, I've got to have a 10-second breath or I've got to have whatever. And it's hard to do because it's just not very natural to try to control the breathing to get it to come out in a certain speed over time that's just the right speed to be able to finish the breath at a certain point in time to meet this goal. It's just not very realistic. You end up fluctuating and breathing more and breathing less and overshooting or undershooting or whatever, because it's not a very good way to manage the speed of the breathing. And what I've found is that you want to try to have a breath that's nice and smooth. You want to have a nice constant smoothness. That's what really kind of helps. If your breathing's all over the place, that's erratic. If you want to kind of calm down and relax, you want it to be nice and smooth and continual, and it's kind of hard to do that if you're trying to sort of control the breathing apparatus to try to get the breath to slow down enough to be at a certain rate that you can extend it a certain amount or whatever. So I discovered that there's a reason why that's difficult. It's to do with what action you perform in order to try to get the breath to go at a certain speed. And it's to do with not realizing the variables that contribute to that. So let's say you want to breathe at a certain rate and you're going several seconds or whatever, and let's say I want to slow that down. How do I slow it down? You'll start thinking, well, I need to control the breath itself. I need to control my diaphragm, or I need to use some muscles somewhere to try to restrict it, how it comes out. I need to, so it's always about, I've got to do something in order to try to slow down the breathing. And so by trying to do that, you end up engaging muscles that create tension and are wobbling all over the place and are hard to control. If you're trying to do that, it just becomes difficult to create a nice smooth breath, because you've got these muscles engaged and they're like going back and forth in how much they're engaged, and it's very hard to use that method to produce a nice long breath, because you just feel like you're just sort of tensing up and everything. So let's see. So I can tell that my breath, as it's coming out, is kind of like, if this is the level of the breath, it's kind of going like this. and it's wavering, and I'm getting a little bit quicker and a little bit slower because I'm trying to sort of use the muscles down here and stuff to try to sort of manipulate the body's breathing mechanism to try to regulate it and slow it down. So I'm sort of fighting with the body, trying to control this natural breathing process. The body wants to breathe quicker. I'm trying to make it breathe slower. And it's awkward, and it's conflict, and it really doesn't give you a nice smooth breath. I mean, you could practice this for a long time and maybe get better at it. But particularly if you want a nice long breath, you've got to be even more precise and controlled in order to really limit the breathing. So I find that that's just annoying, and it doesn't work for me. So what I found was there's a better way, there's an easier way to breathe smoothly and slowly. And it's all to do with, you don't even have to control the breath. All you need to do is control the size of the outlet. Because what I found out is that it's not, if you have a certain size of mouth hole or the nose or whatever, the size of the opening where the air comes out determines how much air comes out at what speed. So I'll show you in a moment. I'm not an expert meditator. I don't know what you're listening to me for, but so anyway. So here, for example, if I have my mouth open at a normal position, it seems as though the breathing takes a certain amount of time to come out. So let's measure this. Maybe about 4 or 5 seconds. Now watch what happens if I open my mouth wide. I'm done in about 3 or 4 seconds. It's quicker because the opening's wider, the air can escape quicker, there's less resistance through the passageways. So the body actually breathes faster because there's a bigger opening. So you open your mouth, you can breathe all of the volume of the air quickly. Like within a second or so, you can fully empty all the air because the opening is big. So the reverse is also true. If you have a really small opening, and you don't even try to control the breathing at all, just the fact that the opening is smaller, the air's trying to pass through the opening, and because it's small, it takes a lot longer for the air to get through there. It's like if you imagine the air was like liquid or something, and the liquid's trying to flow. If you've got a really small tap, the flow of water is slowed down a lot. It can only come out in a small thin stream, and it takes a long time for that water to flow through the tap. But if you have a bigger tap, it's going to gush out really quickly. So this is the trick that I found, where instead of trying to control the breathing and slowing it down and trying to manipulate the muscles and trying to resist the diaphragm and all this stuff to try to breathe slowly, all you need to do is make a small opening. Now, a little bite of an apple. The smallest opening that you can make is when you hold your breath. So whatever you do, whatever action you do to hold your breath, I think it's somewhere in here. It sometimes feels like it's up in the back of the throat or the back of the nose. Sometimes it seems like it's to do with the vocal folds, the vocal cords. When they close, it stops the air from coming out. And there's some muscles that you have that are very small muscles that allow you to hold the breath, to stop the breath completely. So if you practice this a moment and just practice holding and releasing, you'll get a sense of what are those muscles, what is the action that you perform that causes the breath to be held. So let's do this. Let's hold it. You can see here that my larynx, my vocal cords area, is doing something as I hold the breath. So there's a closing of the opening. So what you then need to do is, as you practice what that feels like, to just hold it. Anybody can do this. You just hold your breath. Nothing comes out. You need to slightly hold it. So you're not going to close off all the way. Don't completely stop the breathing, but do the same action lighter or more softly so that the breath is almost fully held, which closes the opening, makes it smaller but not closed. And all you have to do is hold that position. It's got nothing to do with the muscles down here. It's nothing to do with managing the lungs or the diaphragm. It's nothing to do with moving the ribs. It's got nothing to do with trying to restrict the breathing, trying to hold back the breath. It's got nothing to do with you trying to manually manage how quickly it's coming out and trying to not breathe as fast. It's all to do with the size of the opening. So what you do is you almost hold the breath, and then you don't do anything else, because what you'll notice is you just relax, everything else relaxes. You just hold that position, and you'll find that the body automatically breathes slowly. So that was like almost a 15-second breath, even though my mouth is open, because there's a closing here. The breath is only slightly coming out, and because I'm not using any other muscles down here to try to control things, this is just relaxed. The body itself, the autonomic nervous system, just gradually closes up the air. Just the diaphragm is what makes the air move, makes you breathe. As the diaphragm goes down, it makes a space, a vacuum that sucks the air in, and as it relaxes, it comes up and pushes the air out. The speed at which the body tries to push the air out isn't constant. It pushes it out. It has a certain engagement, a certain amount of effort to gradually contract. It's sort of saying, okay, let's start releasing the contraction so that the air will start to release. But the speed at which the air comes out is entirely determined by the size of the opening. So even if the opening's small, the body automatically starts the process of relaxing the diaphragm and breathing out, but it goes very slowly and it's very smooth. There's no interfering with the breathing. There's no attempting to control it. You can just relax and just watch how the body deflates. It's kind of like a balloon. If you blow up a balloon and it's full, if you open up the opening of the balloon fully, it's going to deflate quickly. if you hold the opening slightly open, it's going to deflate very slowly, and it just sort of gradually, smoothly will collapse down. So it's the same thing with your lungs. You fill them with air, you breathe in, and then you make the opening small, and all you've got to do is this is a very small little action with a simple little muscle in there. It's just this kind of a stopping thing, and leave a little hint of a space so the air does come out, and watch how the body just deflates slowly and smoothly. It does it on its own. So you don't even need to control the breathing. You don't even need to try to manage how long it's taking to come out. It's governed by the amount of opening in the throat. And I found this quite amazing, because you can instantly go from a normal breathing rate to a very long breath at the snap of the fingers, just by closing that up quite a lot. You don't have to build up to it. You don't have to gradually lengthen the length of the breathing. You don't have to try to slow it down slowly over time. You can just go straight into a long breath. And that is so much easier. And I also got rid of the attempt to measure the length of the breathing, or to try to hit a target, to try to say, okay, I have to breathe out for 10 seconds, I have to breathe out for 15 seconds. It's impossible to really hit that, because you can't, there's too much going on to be able to regulate that, the breath to perfectly coincide with that moment in time. It has to be that you chose a certain amount of breathing speed at the beginning that was the perfect amount to just so happen to end at the right moment. And that's practically impossible to do. There's no point trying to do that. So instead of doing that, I just decide on, I'm gonna do a certain amount of closure. I'm gonna just hold that and let the breathing happen. It's gonna take as long as it takes. If I want it to become longer, I'm gonna tighten that up a little bit more so that it's even longer. And you'll find also that the more that you close it and the longer the breath gets, the more it feels like there's a pressure. The breath becomes more pressured, there's more compression in the air, because there's more restriction in the opening, and so you feel more pressured. So I'm not that fond of how that feels, to feel this busting to get out air kind of feeling. It's not exactly relaxing. So just somewhere in between, I just, be reasonable. So I'll just lay down and just do this for a while, just do some, close this a little bit and just do some, just relax and let the body do the breathing. Let the body, don't try to control it at all. You've got to really let go, relax, and just notice how the body breathes itself. It does the nice long compression by itself. It does the breathing in nice and slowly by itself, because of the size of that opening. And you don't have to manage that. It's so much easier that all you're doing is just holding a certain position. You're just saying, okay, I'm going to make a hole that's this size. I'm just going to hold it there. I don't have to do anything else. It's a lot easier. And then after some short period of time, you've been breathing in and out nice, and it's very, very smooth. It's totally natural, and it doesn't have that bouncing around of the speed of it, because this is quite easy to hold in a certain position. It doesn't waver. And so after a while you do that, and then your mind starts calming down, and you feel calmer and more relaxed, and you feel smoother in a way. You feel just sort of tranquil and sublime. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily going to fix your life and cause enlightenment, but you know, it's not. I haven't taken it so far as to try to use it as a way to wake up or anything, but it does help to relax, and so that's what I do from time to time. I found that to be so much easier than trying to manage the breathing speed and hit targets and trying to control the breathing so much to try to resist it with all this, trying to stop it from coming out at a certain speed. It's just easy to just hold the opening sort of closed-ish and just relax and let the body do the slow breathing by itself. Anyway, just thought I'd share that in case it's helpful, or if you don't give a crap, it doesn't matter. So let's do a couple. That was a breath out, a breath in, a breath out, and a breath in. I don't know what that was, 30 seconds, 40 seconds or something. Didn't have to really do much other than make the opening smaller. And it's very easy. So there's a thing called yoga breathing, I suppose, where they suggest that you should try to breathe through the nose and you should make this sound. And Darth Vader kind of a, and that sound is made by slightly closing off the airway that causes air to go up into the nose and makes a sort of a hissing sound. And that's supposed to, it does restrict the breath somewhat and causes it to become longer, but you don't have to make a silly sound. All you really need to do is just practice that holding and letting go, and then do part of that so it's almost held, and then everything else does whatever it needs to do. The body just breathes slowly because it just happens to, the air just escapes slowly, and so the breath is longer naturally. You don't have to really try to manage it. So there you go, breathing for meditation 101. That's my tip for today. Bye.